So we just got a big lore drop at the end of the Homeward He Who Caught the Wind event quest. That's a warning that we'll be getting into spoilers for that quest. But since it's a temporary event, it's entirely possible that it's not even playable anymore, so in that case, hey, may as well watch a video about it. Alice gives us a theory on what the Abyss is. I want to make it clear up front that Alice specifically says that the Abyss is
a complete and utter mystery.
She goes on to say that the following explanation is only Barbeloth's interpretation, and that it's the most accurate, not that it is the whole truth. So her explanation is probably very close to the truth, otherwise the developers wouldn't have wasted everyone's time giving this explanation, but there's definitely more twists to it. That said, I gotta be honest, I don't think it could possibly twist enough that my previous theory video would still fit the new explanation, so I guess we can put the whole second half of that video in the trash. The first half is fine though, because it's mostly just a recap of what we know about the Abyss. But that's fine, because now I can make another theory video. So Alice tells us that the Genshin Impact universe is based on the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Obviously she doesn't use those words, and instead gives us an example of herself deciding what to have for lunch. There's a universe where she chooses Sweet Madame, and one where she chooses tea break pancakes. But because this universe is the one where she chose Sweet Madame, the other universe ceases to exist. Now, that's different from many worlds in which both universes would happily go on their merry way, never meeting again. But in Genshin, the universe that we don't experience gets wiped out, and all such unchosen fates eventually coalesce into what we call the Abyss. The Abyss hates our universe out of pure jealousy because we were chosen and it wasn't, and all forms of abyssal incursion that we see are cases where the unchosen fates have managed to cross into our universe. It's possible that when Alice talks about sustaining the world's border, she's not talking about the firmament, but rather the border between realities that is supposed to keep the Abyss out. Now, what determines which of those universes gets to continue? In Genshin, we don't know, but there's another piece of fiction out there with the same exact premise, Loki Season 1. Without spoiling much, in Loki they reveal that the Marvel Cinematic Universe timeline is maintained by an organization whose goal it is to make sure that only one branch exists in the timeline of the multiverse, because any others could be a threat. And the ones they prune do not simply disappear, similar to how unchosen fates in Genshin can become the Abyss. Maybe there's an entity in Genshin Impact doing the same thing. The Heavenly Principles? Let's run with that for now. Irminsul could be a massive computational device that calculates all possible fates so that the Heavenly Principles can select the one with the most preferable outcome. If anything pops up that would lead to a different outcome, Irminsul controls everyone's memories to ensure they only make choices that lead to the fate that the Heavenly Principles has chosen. In other words, in Alice's hypothetical, Irminsul made her choose Sweet Madame, because something bad would have happened at some point if she had chosen tea break pancakes. And maybe the reason why the Abyss has such a hard time existing in Teyvat is because Irminsul forcing people's actions in this way actually stops the unchosen fate from ever happening, even in an alternate universe. Thus, no food is created for the Abyss. So in the hypothetical, there is actually no version of Alice that had anything but Sweet Madame for lunch, because Irminsul altered her mind to remove any possibility of her choosing anything else. My next question is, where do Descenders fit in, and what exactly separates a Descender like the Traveler from just a Trespasser like Skirk? Neither one of them would be recorded by Irminsul, so it would not be able to factor their actions into its fate calculations. Likewise, neither one is ruled by Irminsul, so it can't force them to make decisions to ensure a specific fate. But Skirk is told by Alice that she's not allowed to interfere too much in the world's affairs. Traveler, on the other hand, is free to do whatever they want. Why? I can already see some people typing, well, Skirk was led into Teyvat by Sortilogi, whereas Traveler got here on their own. So, why would someone busting into Teyvat by themselves be the thing to make the powers that be say, okay, you get to mess up all the Heavenly Principles plans? Why would anyone just be allowed to do that? Pragmatically, the Heavenly Principles should just instantly obliterate anything that can't be controlled by their rules. So, the Traveler must be useful to the Heavenly Principles in a way that Skirk is not. And the only thing I can think of is that Traveler can absorb the Abyss to purify abyssal corruption. Skirk Dark just wields it, whereas Traveler can effectively remove it from Teyvat. Since that's the Heavenly Principle's whole goal with regard to the Abyss, it's probably worth the hassle to keep the Traveler around and let them interfere. So that leads us to the assumption that every Descender was someone who could remove the Abyss from Teyvat. The first Descender, the Heavenly Principles, did it when they set up Irminsul. We still don't know for sure who the second Descender is, so I'll leave that open. The third Descender was regarded as a hero similar to the Traveler, but maybe they crossed a line and made the Heavenly Principles decide that they were more useful being carved up and turned into Gnosis. And so far, the Traveler seems to be doing a really good job of getting the Abyss out of Teyvat everywhere they encounter it, so they get to stick around and mess with fate. That's not a complete theory about Descenders, but I think it's another important consideration that we can add to the list. Plus, it still doesn't answer why the Abyss Twin isn't a Descender when they seem to be able to absorb the Abyss as well. Now, when I first started writing the script, the theory I had in mind was that these alternate fates being allowed to exist happily in their own universe was the natural order of the multiverse, and Irminsul controlling fate was what caused them to disappear and become part of the Abyss. Then the Abyss Twins' plot could be to overthrow the Heavenly Principles so that the other universes could exist again. That would basically make Genshin Impact the same exact story as a popular TV show, and I was going to go on about how people are going to try to accuse Genshin of copying when Genshin was released first, and likely had this plot in mind years before that, and that's also why the thumbnail is what it is. I like this theory better. Originally, I couldn't account for why the Abyss would exist in the universe outside Teyvat, but now that's explained. But this theory doesn't answer the first question that I posed. What determines which of those universes gets to continue? If the Abyss comes from the unchosen fates of the whole universe, then who is choosing on behalf of the entire universe? It's possible no one is, and it's just random. It's also possible that the universe eventually getting consumed by the Abyss is the natural order, but the Heavenly Principles setting up Teyvat is stopping that. Why do I bring that up? Because I just thought back to the description of Athame Artis, Durin's signature weapon. In summary, it tells of a planet that has a day and night cycle where when night comes, everything is swallowed by the darkness, but eventually the night ends and everything lives again. However, one night set up a castle with a machine at its deepest level that uses countless pipes to suck energy in from a sea of darkness in order to keep the castle in the light indefinitely. The Little Witch determines that this is just going to kill the planet faster and destroys the machine, after which the planet returns to its normal cycle. Well, what if that planet is a metaphor for the entire Genshin Impact universe? The castle is Teyvat, the knight is the Heavenly Principles, and the machine is Irminsul. Then, the universe is supposed to be consumed by the Abyss so that it can be born again, and Teyvat's existence is threatening to destroy the entire universe forever. A number of characters could be the analog for the Little Witch in this story. It could be the Abyss Twin trying to take down the Heavenly Principles with the Abyss Order, the Traveler who's destined for something great just by nature of being the protagonist, or just all the characters who hate the Heavenly Principles combined into one metaphor. A universe that is destined to end so that it can proceed to the next cycle, and a civilization desperately trying to stop it, is very reminiscent of Dark Souls. We may find more Dark Souls parallels in Genshin lore if we look. Irminsul getting its power from the Abyss is hinted at elsewhere in the game. The hint I'm thinking of is the new lore from the Nodcry Windglider that you receive at the end of the Selenic Chronicles quests. There's probably a lot to unpack in this story, but the part I want to focus on is when the Snow King would need to find a tree that grows downward in the deepest part of the earth, which is obviously Irminsul. Then, a raven perched on its branches. In the raven's belly was a snow-white hare. In the hare's eye was a door that leads to the Abyss. This whole thing could represent the moons having the ability to perceive the Abyss, the Heavenly Principles consuming the moon's power to do so, and using it to create Irminsul. Or I could be totally wrong about the symbolism. But either way, the point here is that in order to reach the Abyss, the Snow King needed to first reach Irminsul. To keep with the theme of my previous videos and trying to make things science fiction, this actually isn't far off. Like I said, Many Worlds is an interpretation of quantum mechanics, so it's not even sci-fi, it's just theoretical science. You could even combine it with brain cosmology from M-theory, one of the leading scientific theories to explain the universe, and come up with the theory that the different worlds can actually interact with each other. I won't try to go too in-depth since I'm ultimately just a layman myself, but dark matter could be gravity from other universes bleeding into ours. So if you take it into science fiction territory, you could make up a setting where worlds could invade each other using that premise, and we could perhaps have a sci-fi explanation of the Abyss that way. If you think I'm trying way too hard to explain this, then you probably haven't played Honkai Impact 3rd, where characters literally try to teach you theoretical physics in-game in order to explain how their universe works. So MiHoYo does, in fact, think about this stuff in their world building. Speaking of which, we could also relate the whole Irminsul versus the Abyss thing to Honkai lore, where the imaginary tree sustains itself by drawing power from the Sea of Quanta to create universes, while the Sea of Quanta constantly tries to consume the imaginary tree and sustains itself on the universes that it discards. I know a lot of people are constantly trying to find connections to say that Genshin Impact takes place in the Honkai universe, and the Abyss is just Honkai, but personally I will refrain from doing so. I've played Honkai Impact 3rd, but not Honkai Star Rail, so I'm happy to listen to those theories, and I don't want to dissuade anyone from making them. Theorize away. That's all I've got for now. I was in the middle of working on a video about the chasm and all the crazy stuff in there, with the new perspective offered by Tsibai's story, when I paused it to make this video, so stay tuned for that in the coming weeks. Also, at the time of this video, I'm getting really close to 10,000 subscribers, which is amazing. A year ago, I would never have thought my channel would get to this point, so giga thanks to all of you who watch. I have a fun meme video planned to celebrate 10K once I get there, so if you want to see that and more, feel free to subscribe if you haven't yet. Thanks again for watching, and see you in the next one.